Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today I'm going to be doing my review of the 1986 film House. Filmed in 1985, released February 26th of 1986. I did do a My First Horror Movie on this movie since it was the first horror movie that I ever watched, but I don't feel I did enough justice to the film in that review, so I wanted to do a full-on review of the movie House. That's how much this movie means to me. Before I get started, there are spoilers, and I feel like this is a movie that you should watch on your own. So please buy this film, stream it wherever available, because it's definitely worth the watch. So let's get started. The movie actually begins with a bunch of still photos over top of the creepiest score I've ever heard to start a film. We see a grocery boy bringing groceries to Mrs. Hooper. He goes to knock on the door, and the door opens. So he walks inside and sets the groceries on the table and says he'll collect next week. He hears some noises upstairs, so he walks upstairs. He's looking around. He opens the door and walks into the jump scare of Mrs. Hooper hanging. It's still to this day such an effective jump scare, the way they use the camera and the music, and it's one of my favorite jump scares of all time. We then cut to the funeral. We meet her nephew, Roger Cobb. He's an author. He wrote a book called Blood Dance a year ago. He's still doing some book signings, autograph signings for that book, but they're not getting the people that they want anymore. His publicist, Frank, tells him we need a new book. Roger's writing one about Vietnam and his experiences there. Frank doesn't want that. He wants another horror book because he believes that nobody wants to read about Vietnam anymore. That night, we cut to Roger at home calling the FBI, asking if they have any new information about his son. They say no, they don't. They'll be sure to contact him right away if they do. Right after he hangs up with them, he gets a phone call from his estranged wife, Sandy. We find out they are going through a divorce. She's an actress, and she just lost at an award show. Roger tries to play it off like he doesn't want her anymore, but at the end of the phone call, we realize he still wants her. That night, while Roger's sleeping, he has a dream about a little boy, we presume is his son, playing with a toy car on a grave. A hand pops up out of the grave to grab the boy. Roger wakes up, packs his stuff, and gets a taxi back to Aunt Elizabeth's house to meet with the realtor right away. They're doing a tour of the house. As they're doing a tour, he lets the realtor know that he used to live there. He grew up in this house. His mother died, and he was raised by his Aunt Elizabeth. They go outside, and they go to the pool. Right at this point, Roger has a flashback of him trimming the hedges and his son Jimmy playing with the car that we seen in the dream. Roger turns away for a second as he's trimming the hedges. He looks back, and Jimmy's gone. He goes walking around the house. He can't find him. He goes inside and asks Sandy if she's seen him. She says no. He walks back outside, and a truck squeals off. Roger's freaking out at this point. He runs to the backyard again. He sees Jimmy flailing around in the pool. Roger runs and jumps into the pool to save him, but there's no one there. He comes up, he's yelling Jimmy, and now Jimmy is just completely gone. We cut to a scene where the detectives are at the house, and Aunt Elizabeth says it's the house, Roger. The house took him. Obviously, no one believes her. We cut back to present time, and Roger's in the boathouse with the realtor, and they're looking at the last painting that Aunt Elizabeth ever painted, and at this point, Roger lets the realtor know he's not going to be selling the house. He's going to be staying there. He feels like this is what he has to do. So now that night, Roger's working on his new book, One Man's Story in Vietnam, when he hears a noise upstairs. He goes up there to the room where Aunt Elizabeth hanged herself, and she's standing there. And he says, Aunt Elizabeth, and she says, "It won, Roger. The house finally won. I didn't think it could, but it did. Leave while you can." She puts the noose around her neck, stands on the stool and jumps off, and she just disappears as Roger runs towards her. Roger then goes to bed in his son's old room in his son's old bed. The next morning, we see Roger taking the trash out, and he meets Harold, the neighbor, who delivers one of the best lines of dialogue in the whole movie.
"Hey, it's great to have a new neighbor. Woman lived here before you was nuts. Biggest bitch under the sun. Just a senile old hag, really. Wouldn't be surprised if someone just got fed up and offed her, you know what I mean?
She was my aunt.
Heart of gold, though. Just a saint, really. And such a beautiful woman for her age. Mm-hmm. Would you like some dinner?"
It also turns out that Harold is a huge fan of Roger's work. Roger tells him he needs some solitude. He's working on his new book. He goes back inside, goes back to writing. We flash back to his time in Vietnam. This is where we meet Big Ben. It's Roger's best friend in Vietnam. He's very loud, very obnoxious, but he's very in-your-face, gung-ho. He's ready to do this. He wants Charlie. He wants to bring down the Viet Cong. We cut back to present time where Roger hears a noise in the closet. He walks upstairs. He opens the closet door to nothing. He walks away. As he's walking away, he hears the grandfather clock ringing. and letting him know it's midnight. He goes back and he opens the closet door again. This time a monster pops out. It starts grabbing at him, scratches his chest up pretty good, grabs him up pretty good. He's finally able to get the door shut. And we cut to the next morning. We see it's almost like a U-Haul, like a delivery truck, dropping off a bunch of video and photographic equipment. Roger sets it all up. He wants to get picture and video of this monster. He opens the closet door and nothing at all. He's kind of shocked at this point, kind of bummed out almost. He's walking around. He walks downstairs and he hears the alarm on the grandfather clock, the bell go off. He runs back upstairs. He sets the cameras up, gets ready to open the door. Right then, Harold walks in the room with dinner, brought him a midnight snack. They go downstairs and have a pretty good line of dialogue about Roger's aunt, how she was crazy, but Roger isn't crazy. He's been through some things, but at this point, Roger tells Harold about the monster, about his divorce, his missing son. Obviously, Harold is very skeptical. As Roger leaves, as Roger's walking Harold out, Harold grabs Roger's address book. When he gets home, he calls Sandy, tells her that he thinks she needs to come back and check on Roger because he's not doing well. He's having Vietnam flashbacks, and he's really worried about him. So now we go back to Vietnam. Roger's writing his book again, and Ben is walking through the jungle, being really loud, really obnoxious. Charlie, Charlie, where are you? Roger gets emotional. He snaps out of it. There's a marlin on the wall, and the eyes start following Roger. And then it starts flapping and flailing around on the wall, all crazy. Roger starts hitting it with a trophy. When that doesn't work, he decides to walk out to the tool shed and get the shotgun. While he's out there, he starts to hear a weird noise. He looks, and there's some garden shears, some hose, some shovels, and they all start chasing Roger. He shuts the door to lock him in, walks back in the house, and he shoots the marlin with the shotgun. He goes upstairs to wash his face, take his medicine at night. He hears a banging on the door. He opens the door and those tools are up there. He hits the shovel with the shotgun. It breaks in half. He runs away and shuts the door, locking him in the room upstairs now. He runs downstairs and Sandy's waiting there for him. And she's like, Roger, why do you have that gun? He sets the gun down and one of the shells rolls off the table. Sandy bends down to get it. Once she stands back up, we realize that Sandy is a monster. They call her the witch in the credits. Roger shoots the witch. She falls out the door and lands on the porch. He walks towards her, and she is not a witch. She is Sandy, which is obviously very upsetting to Roger. Harold looks out his window, hearing the gunshots. He doesn't see Sandy, but he sees Roger, so he calls the police and reports a suicide attempt. Roger hears the police sirens. He picks Sandy up and takes her inside and puts her in the closet. The police get there. They have a pretty funny line of dialogue with Roger and the shotgun. Eventually, he's able to talk his way out of a citation. The police leave, telling him they hope he hears more about his son, and good luck on the next book. Roger realizes his shotgun is gone. He grabs a fire poker, and he goes and looks around the house. He thinks that the witch is back in the closet. As he goes to open the door, she hits him with the butt of the gun, puts it up to his head and says, "Where's your son, Roger? You'll never find him. He's dead." And Roger says, "No, my son's in this house." She pulls the trigger on the shotgun. There's no bullets in it. Roger spins around with the fire poker and hits the witch, jumps out of the room and opens up the door where the tools are that come out and cut the witch's head off. Roger is taking the witch outside. Now he's got her in a bunch of trash bags. And when he walks outside, he sees his neighbor Tanya is swimming in the pool. She comes up to him and she's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I used to swim here with your aunt." Roger says now is not a good time. She says she understands. She knows when it's time for a man to work and when it's time for a man to play. She'll come back later. As they're doing this, the witch's hand is coming out of the bag and Roger's stepping on her foot. He ends up cutting the witch into a bunch of different pieces and burying her all over the backyard. Now, later that night, Tanya comes back to the house and she has her young son, Robert. And she's trying to push Robert off onto Roger to babysit. And Roger's like, "No, that's not a good idea." Robert runs in and Roger looks and sees that the witch's hand is on Robert's back. He's like, I'll get him. He chases him around the house, into the bathroom. He bites the witch's hand, spits it into the toilet, and flushes it down the toilet in a pretty comedic scene, watching his hand go down the toilet. He comes back out. Sandy eventually gets Roger to admit that he'll watch the kid. Roger does not want to do it. He is, at this point, Roger is very nervous. He doesn't want the kid there. We go back to another flashback, and we see Big Ben. As Roger's writing, he finally gets Robert to sleep. He goes to another flashback. We see him writing, And this time, Big Ben is being loud and obnoxious again. Big Ben gets shot in a hail of gunfire from the Viet Cong, which snaps Roger back to the present time. He looks on the couch and Robert is gone. So now he's looking all around the house for Robert. He sees some monsters and he runs into the room and they're taking Robert, up the chimney. Roger goes into the chimney and starts pulling Robert down. They're having a little tug of war with him. Finally, Roger gets the best of him and he gets the kid down. He takes him downstairs and gives him a bath. His mom comes to pick him up. And Roger calls Harold at this point. He says, I need you to come over. We're going to watch a movie. Harold comes over. Roger's like, I lied to you. I need your help with the thing in the closet. It's not a monster. It's a giant raccoon. He gives Harold a harpoon gun. He says, listen, I'm going to open this door. And when I do, I need you to shoot this raccoon. And to make sure that we are on time with each other, I'm going to open it at exactly 12 o'clock when the grandfather clock goes off. He opens the door when the grandfather clock goes off and the monster pops out. At this point, Harold completely freezes. Roger starts hitting the monster with the fire poker. He tells Harold to shoot. Harold shoots. It sticks the monster, but it doesn't do anything. Obviously, the monster retreats into the closet. But the rope that's attached to the harpoon gets Roger on his boot and starts dragging him into the closet. Harold jumps and tries to grab Roger and save him and pull him back out unsuccessfully. Roger is pulled back into another Vietnam flashback where he sees Big Ben laying there after he had been shot. Ben asks him to kill him. Roger says he can't do it. He has the knife up to his neck. He's crying. He tells Ben, I'm going to go get help. I'm going to get help for you. Ben calls him a coward. He gets dragged away by the Viet Cong as Roger walks away. And the Viet Cong starts shooting at Roger. He runs. He sees the door. He jumps through. He's back in the house. Harold is there drunk with a bottle of whiskey and the fire poker. Roger finally gets him woke up. He takes him back over to his house. He goes back and lays in his own bed, his son's bed, and he has a little epiphany. So Roger walks back downstairs and he sees the painting that Aunt Elizabeth was working on. He pulls the rag off the painting in the corner and we see Jimmy's there in the mirror. Roger walks upstairs to the bathroom where the mirror was painted. He looks at the mirror, he breaks it with a stool, and a monster comes out and attacks him. It's getting the best of him until Roger gets a straight razor and starts cutting the monster. At this point, Roger goes and he gets some rope and a shotgun. He starts descending down the hole where he broke the mirror. There's a huge hole, and another monster comes, a winged monster, battles Roger for the shotgun, ends up getting the shotgun, shoots the rope so Roger falls all the way down, lands in a body of water. At this point, he swims and he finds Jimmy, his son, is trapped in a little homemade cage. Looks like it's made out of bamboo. He finally breaks the cage open and gets Jimmy. He's running and now they're getting shot at by somebody. He jumps into that body of water again. He swims back up and he is out in their pool. He comes up, he's holding Jimmy. He walks out to the front door. He opens it up and here we see an undead Big Ben. That's right, Big Ben was behind it the whole time. And he tells Roger, he says, you could have killed me, Roger, but they tortured me for weeks instead. Roger says, I would have died for you, Ben. He says, well, now's your chance. Roger screams, no. A big chase scene ensues. Roger tells Jimmy to go outside. A very fun third act of them fighting each other. One point, Roger takes Big Ben's arm off and starts hitting him with it. At one point, Roger runs out the back door, and it's not the back door anymore, it's a cliff. He's hanging on for dear life, and Big Ben is stepping on his feet. And once he's almost got him all the way down, Roger takes his belt and loops it, throws it up and grabs Big Ben by the hand and flips him off. He falls down and smashes onto the rocks. Happy ending. Roger gets up, walks back in the house. Big Ben is there still. He's a ghost, remember? And he's holding Jimmy and he says, you could have killed me, Roger, but now I'm going to kill your boy. Roger tells him he can't scare him anymore. He's beaten him and this house. He takes a grenade off of Big Ben's jacket and shoves it up in his ribs. Takes Jimmy, they're running. Big Ben blows up, explodes. The house catches on fire. Just as Sandy, his ex-wife, is pulling up in a taxi. Remember, Harold called her earlier. Harold comes out because he heard the explosion from the grenade. The house is on fire. Everyone's upset. Out comes Roger Cobb out the front door holding Jimmy. He sets Jimmy down. Sandy's emotional. There's her son again. Jimmy runs out to her, gives her a big hug. The ending is a freeze frame of a very happy Roger Cobb standing in front of the house that he finally defeated. So, as you know, I always rank these movies on a scale of 1 to 5. 0 to 5. 0 skulls being the worst, 5 skulls being the best. House gets a 4.25 from me. I don't know if that's the nostalgia talking, because there are little things about this movie that will bother you, but it is a horror comedy. But there's a lot of emotion. You can't have horror without emotion, is something Stephen King's always said, and there's definitely a lot of emotion in this movie. From seeing an elderly lady commit suicide to a young child being kidnapped, to another kid almost being killed, to thinking Roger killed his wife. There's a lot of emotion that goes along with this movie. And it's one of those movies that I can explain it all day, but unless you watch it, you don't understand how great this movie truly is. So, as always, I'm a huge fan of this movie. I would recommend this movie to anybody. You really should watch this movie, House from 1986. It is well deserving. The t-shirt will tell you. The poster will tell you. You see these things in every single episode of Sledgehammer Horror. I am such a huge fan of this movie. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. As always, you guys, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.